Wow, thanks, Kim. That was an awesome conversation. And again, to Mr. Risley and Chief Paul, thank you. Thank you for taking us inside that landmark deal. I know a lot of us have a lot of questions and are very excited about this opportunity, and we'll continue to be hearing more about this story. And we wish you well as it unfolds. We're going to broaden our focus, and we're going to take a deep look at the economy of the entire region, and maybe consider a little bit about what the future might hold. So, of course, much of our discussion is going to be through the lens of the global pandemic and what it means for us as we start to move towards a new normal. We have with us today two thoughtful and very plugged in Atlantic Canadians, and they are going to lead this conversation with the help of Laurel Broten. Laurel is the president and CEO of the Nova Scotia Business Inc., and she's also a PPF board member. And Frank McKenna will be here with us. Mr. McKenna is deputy chair, wholesale TD Bank Group, three-term premier of New Brunswick, and Canada's former ambassador to the United States. And he's also the name on the award that we're going to be giving out this afternoon to our two award recipients. So thank you both for joining us, and I'll hand the baton over to Laurel.
Thank you so much, Karina, and thank you, Frank, for joining us today. Frank, you and I have about 20 minutes to plan for a future with an even stronger and more resilient economy here in Atlantic Canada post-COVID-19. So let's not waste any time. From my vantage point in Halifax, what I see is a vibrant region, one that's being held up across the country as a COVID success story. The Premier spoke about that. We know from our neighboring provinces, it's extremely fragile. So Frank, can you give us your perspective on how you see the advantage and opportunities for the Atlantic region in a post-pandemic world? Is COVID providing us an opportunity to double down and sell the region?
Well, I'm going to take one of my minutes to thank you, Laurel. One of the great gifts to our region has been you, coming in as a lawyer from Bay Street and a former cabinet minister and public policy expert to be living here. That's terrific. Ed Greenspun and sponsoring this event is another true friend of the region. Appreciate it enormously. And I have to say how inspired I was with the conversation with John Risley and Chief Terry Paul. The model of what they've done is a model for the country. It's a template for the country, and they've always been my heroes, and even more so now. And I do want to get a word in to congratulate Senator Wanda Thomas Bernard and Penelope Rowe. We talked a little bit earlier about what extraordinary people they are. And finally, I just want to say a big goodbye to the best politician in Canada today. And I say that without reservation. Premier Stephen McNeil has done an outstanding job under the most difficult of circumstances. So with all of that aside, I think we're living in the best of times in a funny sort of way for Atlantic Canada. I think the pandemic has driven value to the top. People know here that largely speaking, we're safe, which is good. We're largely respectful of each other. We respect the fact that our individual rights must be sublimated to community rights. That's not true everywhere in the world. All of those are good things. We also know that we can work remotely from here, and that's a good thing. We also know that we have a high degree of connectivity, which we take for granted. So when I add all of that together, I see where we now are a major destination area for people around the world trying to buy our real estate or to move here sight unseen. And we need to build on that. There's an extraordinary opportunity, which we've always thought it was available to us to sell our quality of life, but now it's in blazing lights. And I think it's a glorious opportunity for us.
Thanks, Frank. And thank you for the comments that you've made. I think one of the secret sauces in Atlantic Canada is a sense of community. And I think we've seen that in spades today. We've seen the conversation with John and Chief Terry and where that got a sense of wanting to do the right thing for community. And we see that build out in the conversations that we're having. Premier challenged us to talk about export, and I'm pleased to be able to do that. And an interesting development in terms of export is, as you've said, the ability to export yourself and work remotely. The pandemic brought that overnight. Literally, people were, able to work from anywhere, and they're choosing to work from Atlantic Canada. From your perspective of a long career championing Atlantic Canada, do you think this is a temporary trend, or is it something that's here to stay, and we can keep encouraging people to come to Nova Scotia, set up business operations, come to New Brunswick, wherever in Atlantic Canada for the long haul?
Yeah, I think we can. And I just agree very strongly with what John Risley talked about, and that is that we have to think globally. We can live locally and enjoy this enviable quality of life, and yet we can work globally, and we have to work globally. Quite frankly, we don't have enough people or demand within these markets here to sustain ourselves. So we need to be citizens of the world. So I'm going to say a couple of things that are semi-obvious, but I'll just state them emphatically. It's all about the people. When all is said and done, it's all about the people. And if we've got people, there's an old saying, it's not the dog in the fight, it's the fight in the dog. Well, it's the fight in the people. And if we've got people here who are ambitious and trained, educated, and determined, we're going to be winners. This is going to be a different world. It's going to be a world of value added. I saw an article this morning that of the 10 million jobs lost in the United States, over 5 million of them will not be coming back. They're going to be replaced by robots. That's the world we live in. We know in this pandemic that there's going to be displacement. So we have to be leading that. We have to be leading value add. We have to be leading innovation. We have to take advantage of the crown jewels of Atlantic Canada, our universities and community colleges. They're just world class, and we need to use them as a beacon to bring people in and to keep them here. And we need immigrants. I just can't say that strongly enough. That should be priority 1, 2, and 3, and that is replenishing our population. It's aging, and it's been diminishing up until more laterally, and we need immigrants, and we need to keep them. There's a wonderful study out in the last day or two saying that the Atlantic immigration pilot has a 90% retention rate, and we need to build on that and bring these gifted people to our communities. And if we do all of those things, we're going to be big winners.
Well, let me pick up there on population growth. And I know that you've championed the need for population growth all across Atlantic Canada for so many years. We've been privileged here in Nova Scotia. We've been running a well-received campaign saying work from here. We've increased population within Canada and internationally in terms of immigration over the last couple of years. What do you say to those individuals? Because there still are some of the naysayers out there. I mean, what do you say to those individuals that want to keep things the same, don't want to see growth in population, worry that will detriment the quality of life that we so proudly have and talk about here in Atlantic Canada?
So 2 messages. One, we need more people, period. And there was a very interesting report this week that in the United States, where Trump shut down immigration and said, look, it's going to drive all of our own workers into these jobs. The end result of that is in. The experiment is over. And the US dried up its immigration, but employers could not get access to workers. The workers who had been unemployed did not go to those jobs. So we need immigration, number one. And number 2 message, and maybe it's the more thoughtful message, is we can't leave people behind. We can't simply say you're wrong. Those people who disagree with this view, we need to understand their underlying anxiety. In many cases, they're victims. They've not been given the tools ever, and we have a social welfare system, unemployment insurance, etc., which tends to trap people. And we also have a system that tends not to provide tools to people. And so we have to enrich the experiences of our unemployed people so that they too can participate in this new economy. And the last thing I would say is that it's more than just warm bodies we do need those. And it's more than just our native New Brunswickers and Nova Scotians and Atlantic Canadians getting to work. But we need something else that only immigrants can provide. And that is an energy, almost a desperation, coming from places that have known extraordinary hardship and adversity, coming here with all of their entrepreneurial skills. And it makes us better people and richer people. So for all of those reasons, we have to press on with this fight.
Well, we've had an inspiring story of what has happened with respect to the purchase of Clearwater. Firsthand that the evidence is that immigrant population come, build, create a more diversity, makes for stronger businesses. When you think about the future of Atlantic Canada right now, in this moment in time, where we're going to come outside of a global pandemic, where there's a lot of language about build back better. What does build back better mean to you, Frank? And what is your message to those of us in Atlantic Canada who want to champion making sure that this is a very strong and vibrant part of our country?
Yeah, I think we have to build on our inherent strengths, not create new ones. And for example, the human resources, I repeat that over and over again. We have high quality people, we have high quality universities, but it's not universal. We've got to produce really strong people. Thomas Friedman had this wonderful quote. He went to Taiwan and gave a speech, and he said, you're the luckiest people in the world. You have no natural resources, you have no natural strengths other than your people, and you have to rely on your people to be so successful. And it's true, our people have that ability. And when I look across the region, I'm quite involved in the digital world, and we look across the region at the extraordinary accomplishments of our technology community and the ecosystem. It's really amazing. So I think we have to build on people, provide more skills to more people. I think we also have to not take our quality of life for granted, keep building out rural internet connectivity, so that everybody gets to share, not just people in cities, but everybody gets to share the experience, protect our beaches, make sure we've got trails that contribute to the quality of life, make sure we continue to have affordable housing for everybody. Those are all building blocks of what I think will be the new Atlantic economy.
That's great. I hope that all Canadians that are watching are thinking about how they can move to Atlantic Canada and be part of this future, because it is an incredible place to live, and we're really privileged, and great leadership and a good focus on wanting to make sure that we're doing this together. I want to turn for a second and talk a little bit about, you mentioned earlier the US. And we were talking about exports, and we now have a new president with President Biden in the U.S. You've spent time in Washington and have had your time there. What do you say to Atlantic Canadians with respect to what will be the good things and perhaps the not so good things, if there are any, about the way President Biden will approach a business relationship with us here in Canada, and in particular Atlantic Canada?
Well, we had a saying in Washington that's almost always been true. If you want a friend, get a dog. And in Washington, it's all about interest. And to the extent that our interests coincide with the US administration, I think we're going to do good business together. But they will not even coincide, even with a friendly president. I think the Democratic Party is inherently friendly towards Canada. We share a lot of values. Biden has a long history with Canada. I think they'll be simpatico at the prime minister president level. All of that's good, but it's still all about the interests. We need to identify where our interests are common. And that means we've got to figure out how we deal with Buy America. Why is that important? Why is it important we be part of that? Well, because of our supply chain integration, and we need to make sure that we open the kimono for Buy Canada too, so that Americans are included in that. Why is energy important to them? Well, we've got a big percentage of US energy shut down this week as a result of those horrible storms that have hit it. So Canadian oil, Canadian gas, all of these are flowing. They need energy security. We can provide it. We're integrated, we're connected. We have 70 pipelines crossing the border in both directions. On climate change, we're extraordinarily simpatico. We're further ahead in many ways because of what Trump was over the last 4 years. But I think the new Biden administration will see us as a friend. we're friends in terms of multilateralism. We all agree that we need to be part of a bigger world and share and care. And that includes WHO and includes WTO and includes Paris Accords and Iran and maybe the Trans-Pacific Partnership Comprehensive Agreement. In so many ways, we're lined up quite nicely with the U.S. Administration. So we just need to keep emphasizing those areas where we're lined up together and we have a mutuality of interest. We need this market. Look, 40%, almost of our GDP goes there. Our kitchen cabinets go out of Shediac and a lot of them go down the US coast. A lot of our Atlantic companies ship right into New England. This is a really important market for us.
The questions are coming in from the audience fast and furious. So I'm going to turn to a couple of those. One of them is, what is your perspective, Frank, on what are the top 3 areas, the top 3 growth areas for the region? If you could say, focus on 3 things, what would they be?
Well, I think food. I think the world is now aware of just how perilous food security is, and it just so happens we're filled with arable land across our region, and whether it's blueberries or apples, or whether it's wine production, or which is an essential food, of course, or whether it's potatoes and other commodities, fish, and so on. I think we can do a much better job of consolidating our strength in food security. Immigration, obviously, we have to grow our population. And we also have to, there's so many other things I could say, but we also have to make sure that the rural areas are included in this. It can't be just Halifax and Moncton and St. John's and so on. We've got to find roles for our rural area. And the pandemic gives us some guidance on that. First of all, the rural areas are inherently safer and more secure, I would say. Secondly, with connectivity, people can work from those rural areas and participate in the global economy. I'll just give you an example. We've moved 1,000 TD jobs, their whole finance back office to Moncton. A lot of the people that are working there are now working remotely from across Canada, but mostly across various parts of New Brunswick. We just introduced a new TD Insurance Center about 3 months ago. It is now headed towards 156 employees. And the magic of it is that a lot of these people are being taken from rural areas in northern New Brunswick. They can work at a full-time, good-paying job without ever leaving their home in St. Isidore or someplace. And this has been so successful, we're now expanding it into Nova Scotia and St. John, New Brunswick. So there are myriads of industries like ours that can take advantage of this dispersed labor force. We have a chance, if we work at it, of making sure that rural Atlantic Canada becomes a full mainstream participant in the Atlantic economy.
You're absolutely right. That's an exciting silver lining of the pandemic. A big build out in terms of internet connectivity, because we know we need that to be able to work remote or to be able to sell our goods internationally. We know the world is getting smaller. So in terms of export connectivity, does it matter where you're sitting from? No, you're going to be doing, your sales perhaps over the internet in a virtual way. But all that means you can do that from anywhere. So I think it is an exciting part for people who are looking for something different, for quality of life, for a seaside option. And it's a piece of something that we have in Atlantic Canada that we really should be proud of. We're getting some questions about the film industry. And I know from our seat here at Nova Scotia Business Inc., we run the Film and Television Fund for the province. It has been an incredible year. There's so much interest, again, because of our COVID safer jurisdiction. People wanted to come up and set up here. So the question is, do you see that as an opportunity right across Atlantic Canada? What's your perspective on the film and television industry as something that can drive economic potential in Atlantic Canada?
Yeah, I get a little taste of it. I have a request to do an interview in a couple of weeks' time for a new film being done on Yvonne Durrell. And I've got to decide whether it's Brad Pitt or Tom Cruise who ends up playing me in that position. But seriously, just the fact that people are talking about doing productions during the time of pandemic is pretty exciting. And Laurel, you can expand on. So she's got a very, very robust uh, animation and live film industry, and it's extremely impressive. But the only remark I would make is that at a time, especially when the United States and larger urban centers are so very insecure in terms of COVID, I think we just stand out like a shining beacon. So I'm sure you're exploiting it every single day.
We're certainly talking about our COVID safer jurisdiction, and we've been connected with people all over the world, and they'll say, well, where are you? And I'll say, well, I'm in my office. You know, we're able to do that here, and that makes a big difference. I really think that in terms of where we will be a year from now is something that is interesting in terms of the economic momentum, and making sure that we don't, goes, trite saying, but don't waste a crisis. We don't want to waste a crisis. We want to really build our economy here in Atlantic Canada. We're in our last few minutes. So what would be your last pieces of advice at this point in time, hearing, the segment that just came before us? What are those pieces that are going through your head and say, I really want to see this 1 year from now, when we gather again or report back on what we've been up to?
Yeah, well, there are a lot of pieces to it, and I admire the leadership of our region who have brought us through this terrible affliction relatively safely. But I guess I would come back to people again. I want to see our universities and community colleges supported. I think that right now, the United States, other parts of the world are turning off some of the best minds around, Indian engineers and Iranian chemists and so on. We need to embrace all of those people. We need to bring them here. So we need to have our universities well funded and well supported. And then in terms of immigration, not only do we need to get them here, and you're doing a great job at that, New Brunswick has been very successful, the whole region has been, but we need them here. And right now our retention rate is good, but we need to make sure they've got jobs. I was reading about a very skilled worker this morning who may have to leave the region because she came here and she can't find a job in her field. We have to work hard at that. We can't take it for granted. And we need to make sure that immigrants get deep roots, and we create communities here where people feel comfortable with their food, with their religion, with their language, and all of the things that are important to them. I think if we can do that, it's going to create an energy and a buzz. We have affordable housing, which is a key element of security. We have food security, I believe. We have really, really nice people who take care of their neighbors and who believe in that our collective interest is our individual interest. Those are powerful things that the rest of the world does not always experience. And so I think that we have to work on this population piece above everything else, making sure that we grow it and secure it and make everybody's experience coming here one that they'll be joyful about, and that our experience with them is joyful as well.
Well, what a great way to end this conversation, Frank. Really my pleasure to be able to chat with you, to have a joyful place to live and work is something that we're really pleased and proud to be able to talk about around the world. And now everybody watching knows why Frank McKenna is Frank McKenna, able to talk about all sorts of things and do it in a way that makes us feel positive and energized. So thank you for the time today, Frank. And I'm going to turn it back to you, Karina.
Thanks, Laura.
Thanks, Laurel. Thanks, Frank. Thank you to a great discussion. Two of our great regional leaders talking about really important things. The one thing I took away that I feel like tied everything together was food. So if we can leverage our industries like our amazing Clearwater deal, bring a new resilient group of immigrants in to help us grow an industry that we're already so strong at, and use it to strengthen rural Atlantic Canada, how awesome would that be? So thank you both for your comments. It is a great lead-in to the next session, which is where we will be granting our awards for the Frank McKenna Award for Leadership in Public Policy. as these two women have been actually working at the grassroots and throughout our organizations and government to do a lot of what Frank talked about we need to do. So it is my great pleasure and honor to introduce our first recipient of our Frank McKenna Award for Leadership in Public Policy, and that is Senator Wanda Thomas Bernard. Senator Thomas Bernard is a trailblazer, a woman of firsts. She doesn't just break glass ceilings, she shatters them. Throughout her career, Senator Bernard has fought hard and successfully for social justice and equality. A social worker by profession, Senator Bernard was appointed to the Senate of Canada in 2016, the first African Nova Scotian woman to take a seat in the Red Chamber. Her appointment was the culmination of a long career, a frontline social worker in Nova Scotia, founder of the Association of Black Social Workers in 1979, professor at the Dalhousie School of Social Work, the first African Nova Scotian to hold a tenure track position. There, she developed a curriculum for the Afrocentric social work course. In 2017, Senator Bernard was the first African Canadian to be appointed Professor Emeritus in the School of Social Work at Dalhousie University, the first woman within the SSW to achieve this appointment. So, what an incredible resume. I am so excited to hear from you. It is my great pleasure to introduce Senator Wanda Thomas Bernard.
Thank you. Thank you, Karina. Am I speaking now? Sorry. Yes. My apologies. Sometimes things get a little, I've been booted off 3 times, so I've been in and out of the space. I want to, first of all, thank you for this award. Premier McNeil, Mr. McKenna, Mr. Greenspan, Ms. LeBlanc, Chief Paul, and my fellow honoree, Penelope Rowe, and for all of you who have joined us today, I want to say thank you. And receiving the coveted Frank McKenna Award is very special, and it's especially special today to have Mr. McKenna in the space with us. But I must say, this is not about receiving an award, but it's really about having the work that I've done over so many years, having that work recognized. This award, as you've indicated, is for outstanding contributions to public policy by Atlantic Canadians, named in honor of Mr. McKenna, and one of the people that I've certainly admired in my career. It's about recognizing Atlantic Canadians who have built bridges between sectors. I'd like to think I've done a little bit of that. Who've contributed to public policy. I think I've done a bit of that. And who've shown exceptional leadership. And I believe that we all show leadership in different ways. I am so privileged to work with an amazing team in the Senate of Canada. I'm also privileged to work with colleagues across sectors, to work with people and organizations and communities who want to work with me to be part of a change process, who want to work with me to drive change, who want to and who have worked with me to lead the change we want to see. And today I want to say to you, I am because you are. My strength comes from you and your engagement. My ability to continue to fight for change, even when it's difficult, is facilitated by very strong roots, by being part of a very resilient family, by having mentors and role models that have inspired me, by having a strong spiritual base, and by having such amazing colleagues. I would often say to people that I'm working with over the years, I have this idea. I have this thing that I think we can do. And for all of the people who've always stepped up and said yes, I want to say that this award belongs to all of us. This award belongs to all of you. And I want to thank you for all that you do every single day to lead change and to contribute to public policy. Good public policy will drive our quest for economic justice. Good public policy will drive our quest for social justice. And yes, they are interconnected. And let's not forget that we need to also remove systemic barriers that impede success in business development. Those systemic barriers that impede success in employment for marginalized citizens in Atlantic Canada and worldwide, of course, but we're talking about what's happening in Atlantic Canada. We have some responsibility for doing that. And I must say that it is especially gratifying to be receiving this award today, to have the privilege of hearing this up-close conversation between Chief Terry Paul and Mr. John Risley. What you've done is so groundbreaking. What you've been able to accomplish is so inspirational. We are indeed leading change in Atlantic Canada, as Premier McNeil has said. This deal is an example of reconciliation in action. This deal is an example of the kind of actions that we need to lead transformation on so many levels. And I've been tweeting about this. I've been checking in with people that I work with in the African Nova Scotian community in particular, sort of thinking about how we make those connections between economic justice and social justice, which is so clearly evident in the work that you've done together. So on this day, in accepting this award, I want to say thank you to all of those folks who've made this possible, and for all of those folks who continue to work together to build bridges, to drive change, to ensure that we're doing better and we're doing the best that we can for all of our folks in Atlantic Canada. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wanda, and I look forward to bringing you back in a few minutes to have a conversation with myself and Penelope. So on to our next recipient of the Frank McKenna Award for Leadership in Public Policy, Penelope Rowe. After an early career as a journalist and political involvement, she was hired to establish the Community Sector Council Newfoundland and Labrador in 1976. Penny has built the CSC from a small local organization to a strong provincial group, which is now nationally recognized. She is described as a risk taker with a keen entrepreneurial spirit and a passion for public policy and community development. She is driven by conceptualizing new approaches to thorny issues. She has applied business acumen to building a successful social enterprise, learning you either fail or succeed. And to succeed, that nonprofit organizations have to produce services and products in which others want to invest. She's described as a force of nature by politicians and other leaders. Penny's perseverance and pragmatism has led to her successes in launching innovative programs, from early childhood education and more recently to supplying computers and iPads to connect citizens during the pandemic. Penny has also had numerous roles on government boards, such as chair of the Workers' Compensation Commission for 11 years. Her vision promotes the community sector as central to economic and social development. And through her strong beliefs and tenacity, governments are now recognizing the positive impact the sector can bring in terms of jobs, skills, and the economy. It seems there's not a social policy issue that Penny has not tackled. For all of this, Penny is being honored today. Congratulations, Penny.
Thank you, Karina, and thank you as well to the Public Policy Forum, which has organized this wonderful event today. I have to say it's been such a pleasure listening to my fellow honoree, Wanda Thomas Bernard, and to hear her talking about how important it is to work together and for all of us to be pulling on the same oars, if you will, to make sure that as we build our local economy and our Atlantic economy, that we recognize the value that so many people bring to the work that we're doing. I think when I was growing up, I don't think I really aspired to being working in the social policy field or the public policy field. It was something that I came to rather unnaturally. You mentioned that I was a young journalist, and I remember one of the first episodes I had was sitting in the newsroom and seeing all of my male colleagues get up and say they're going off to have a beer at the local brewery while they're selecting the athlete of the year. Well, of course, the athlete of the year was obviously going to be a man. And there was something about that that kind of rankled with one of my other female journalists and myself. So we got out of our chair and basically stormed the barricades of the brewery and went in and said that it was not acceptable that there were no female athletes on the nominee list. And so, of course, they thought we were acting quite abruptly, but nonetheless, we held our ground and we said it was unreasonable that a female could not be elected Athlete of the Year. So they threw us a challenge: find a trophy. If you can get a trophy, then we'll consider having an Athlete of the Year. So off we trotted to the local tavern, Dynamite Dunn's, and got a trophy. From that day forward, there's always been a female Athlete of the Year. That was an incredible learning experience for all of us, that by seeing something that was wrong, by seeing something that needed to be changed, in fact, by taking action, we could make change. So that, in fact, has kind of underpinned a lot of the work that I've seen taking place through policy advocacy, particularly by women, particularly by people who work in the nonprofit and community-based sector. Over the course of the years, I think we've learned many lessons. Initially, we had to be very combative. In fact, there were times when at the Community Sector Council, we had to go undercover in order to get a good story that could give us the ammunition we needed to bring about social change. And we were in fact accused of CIA tactics, of doing things that were really underground, underhanded in order to make a point. And when we were accused of CIA tactics by the minister of the day, what was fascinating was, in fact, the minister was using us to help the community mobilize to bring forward really important issues around the deplorable housing conditions in the community for people who were released from institutions. So the minister needed to use that public mobilization in order to make his point around the cabinet table. So again, that was another very important lesson that we learned. So over the course of the years, working through the Community Sector Council and working with extraordinary boards of directors, all of whom are volunteers, and an extraordinary group of staff colleagues, we've been able to effect incredible social change in this province. But interestingly, what we've learned as well is that in most of the public discourse, and we've seen that today with this wonderful transformative story that we heard about the fishing industry and the takeover by the Indigenous groups of the fishing business, we've learned that in fact we have to look more widely at how we do our business. And so we've heard all about the private sector and the public sector, and everything that has been said about building Atlantic Canada, while everybody has given voice to the importance of our communities and given voice to the people on the ground who make our communities what they are, nobody has framed that in the context of the community sector itself. So the main message I'd like to bring today, and it's, I think, part of the reason why I've been so fortunate to receive this wonderful award, is because of our growing understanding that we need to be able to position the community sector fully and intentionally alongside the public and the private sectors. Typically, we give lip service to what all of our nonprofit organizations are doing and what volunteers are doing. I think perhaps now is the time, and it's a wonderful opportunity as we try to drive our local economy, to look at the role that nonprofits play. And when I heard Mr. McKenna talking about building rural communities, if you think of many of our rural communities, generally a single economic engine is a nonprofit organization. It might be a local theater or a local museum or some organization that has enabled small business to grow around those kinds of nonprofit organizations. So I think just to close my remarks, I'd like to say again how much I appreciate receiving this award. And I think I appreciate it most of all because it really does indicate how much people coming together can do together. Even though we have grown and evolved in the way in which we develop social policy, the way in which we talk about public policy, we still have so much further to go in really being able to give voice to that community sector, all the volunteers, all of the people who work in the sector. And in fact, research in Newfoundland has indicated that collectively, the community sector is the single largest employer in our province. So we need to find ways of shoring up that sector. Talk about immigration. What better way for newcomers to get integrated into a community than serving on a board or serving as a volunteer or coming to work with a nonprofit organization? So I think we have so many directions we can move in and new ways we can invest in social infrastructure and ways in which we can look at the community sector as a place for investment rather than a place where we are always perceived as having our hand out for donations and for government grants. If we view what we're doing as an investment, then I think we'll see a sea change in how we develop our local economy and how we build the Atlantic economy back again.
Thanks so much, Penelope, for your comments. We're going to welcome back Senator Bernard. And we just have a few minutes to have a discussion, the three of us. And I was thinking on what unites the work that the three of us have done throughout our careers. And a lot of it has to do with bringing voices that aren't typically heard into the decision-making circle. And you both alluded to that in your comments. So I wanted to kick off the first question, leaping off of something that Frank McKenna left us with, which is the concept of when we build back better and differently, we can't leave people behind. So I'd like to start with you, Senator Bernard, and tell me, what does that mean for you, and how will you as a senator and leveraging your platform in the Senate look at not leaving people behind as we move forward?
Would you mind starting with Miss Rowe? My grandsons have literally just arrived after school, and I just need to give them some direction.
That is
So
fantastic. No
I'm
problem.
going to take myself off.
Penelope.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So I'll repeat the question. Penelope, from your perspective, what does it mean as we build back better that we can't leave people behind? What does that mean to you?
I think it means that we have a wonderful opportunity to actually make the community sector, the nonprofit sector, a full partner in all of the thinking that we're doing, in all of the planning that we're doing, whether it's social development or economic development. In fact, my own personal view, and I think it's shared by others, is that the community sector is absolutely central to economic and social progress. If, for example, we think even about how we build our healthcare systems and the way in which we look to making sure we have a healthy population, we need to be thinking about things like the social determinants of health. We need to be concerned about people's income, or as Former Premier McKenna would say, the best social program could be jobs for people. We need to figure out how we bring everybody onto a level playing field so that we have the capacity for full participation and for engaging people at whatever stage in their life or with whatever skill set they have or talents that they have, that we can find an appropriate place for all individuals so that we indeed can build back better. If you think about where we are now with the pandemic, just reflect for a minute. Who were the first people to step up? It wasn't only governments. It wasn't only businesses. It was all of those thousands of organizations, nonprofit organizations, who are out of the blocks really quickly, on the ground, being nimble, delivering food, helping people, making social connections, keeping in touch with people. So not to include the community sector in a very much more articulated and a much more intentional and deliberate manner, I think will leave out an enormous group which really can play a significant role in building a local economy and local prosperity.
Thank you, Penelope. Yes, if we want to create a pathway to jobs, I think it behooves us not to listen to the community nonprofits who work grassroots in understanding the needs of our more vulnerable populations and helping them achieve their potential. It's going to be a critical voice at the decision-making table. So thanks for those comments, Penelope. I think our Grandma Bernard is still taking care of her young ones. Oh, there you are, Senator Bernard. So
I'm back. I'm so sorry, but this is one of the realities that we're dealing with because of COVID.
I only wish we could see your young grandsons, because I think that would make all of our days.
Well, they may be back in a moment. You never know. It's after school. They're in school, which is a good thing. So I think the question was around what do we need to do in terms of the building back better, and what does that speak to me?
Yes, and in particular, what does it mean to you about the concept of we can't leave people behind?
Yes. So one of the things that I would say is, and this really hasn't come much into our conversation today, but I think it's important that we bring it into the conversation. One of the realizations that has come through the pandemic of COVID is the pandemic of racism following the murder of Mr. George Floyd, and the fact that that was recorded and played over and over and over. And so the Black Lives Matter movement, has become much more global awakening and a reckoning. And around the world, people are really looking specifically at that. Also, I think paying more attention to Indigenous communities and really recognizing the disparities. If anything, I think COVID has made the racial disparities, that much more visible. And so when we talk about not leaving anyone behind, we really need to bring that into the discussion. And we need to look at how do we address those systemic barriers, the systemic barriers that are in the way, that have impacted communities for generations, for years. So how do we do that? And we must have that as part of the Building Back Better plan, as part of the plan of not leaving anyone behind. And I think wonderful and very encouraging to talk about recognizing what immigrants bring to our communities, and really how do we truly value people, and how do we value new people coming into our communities and embrace what they bring and treat them well? How do we create networks and space for people to truly belong, to truly contribute, to truly be a part of the communities, and not just focusing on what they bring, but also what we must bring to them.
Thank you, Senator. This feels like just the beginning of the conversation instead of the ending of one. But I am so grateful to have had a quick chance to talk with you both, because you've raised such important issues. We can't really move forward with Building Back Better unless we address systemic racism. It's inherent in our understanding of true reconciliation. of immigration, of working with our BIPOC communities and helping them reach their potential. And in that is engaging the community nonprofit group to the decision-making table because they're at the grassroots. So I think your messages are so important and really the foundation of where we need to look forward, building back better. So it was my great honor to sit with you for these very brief moments, and congratulations on being recipients of the awards today. And so I am going to pass it over now to Julie Caffley, who's the Public Policy Forum's Executive Vice President for External Relations, and she's going to provide us with some closing remarks.
Thank you, Karina. I promise to be short and sweet. It's been a very full afternoon, and thank you so much for so many inspiring Canadians to have played a role. It's been just a pleasure. So a big thanks to Premier McNeil, Chief Terrence Paul, John Risley, and Frank McKenna for being with us today and providing such interesting insights. A big congratulations to our Frank McKenna Award recipients, Senator Wanda Thomas Bernard and Penelope Rowe. To our inspiring board members from Atlantic Canada who hosted us today, Karina LeBlanc and Laurel Broten, and absolutely a pleasure to be with you. I just wish we could all be going to a Nova Scotia kitchen party right now, as opposed to sitting in front of our screens in our homes. Thanks to our guests for participating today, the rich conversation, and of course to all of our partners, our lead partner, TD Bank Group. Special thanks to our supporting partners, and you'll see them on the screen: BNI, Dalhousie University, National, and the Government of Nova Scotia. It's been an absolute pleasure. We look forward to seeing you again soon, and we look forward to being back in Atlantic Canada soon and in person. Thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us.